Hey guys, tonight we're time traveling, not through wormholes or shiny machines, but through frost-bitten breath, flickering firelight, and the haunting silence of a cave where the only thing louder than the wind is your heartbeat. You're not in your cozy bed anymore, you're deep in Ice Age Europe, huddled next to someone who looks like you but isn't. Broad nose, heavy brow, and a chest built like a wood-burning stove, and he's not wearing deodorant. Welcome to the world of Neanderthals. This isn't going to be a thrilling roller coaster of warlords or epic battles. You're here to fall asleep, deliciously, peacefully bored to the edge of dreaming. But fair warning, you're going to learn that the Neanderthals weren't just shaggy cavemen dragging clubs, they were absolute freaks of nature in the best, weirdest ways. And honestly, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in their world without crying. No judgment, I wouldn't either. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop me a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I'm genuinely curious who's drifting off with Ice Age brain facts at 3:17 AM. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through snow, wet, crusty, thigh-deep snow, the kind that makes your socks soggy even though you're wearing 2 layers of prehistoric fur. The air tastes metallic, like frozen pennies, and your breath clouds thick in front of your face. All around, pine trees bow under the weight of ice, and far off something howls, not a wolf, too deep. Maybe a cave lion, or worse, one of those hyenas the size of motorcycles. You're following a path worn into the white by thick, stubby feet. To your right, a Neanderthal matriarch leads the way, hoisting a crude torch she lit with flint and dried moss. Her face is deeply lined, like cracked leather, and her brow juts so far forward it practically offers shade, but her eyes, grey, thoughtful, ancient, keep scanning the forest with calm expertise. This is your new tribe, and you're walking home after a day of scavenging and checking trap lines. You're not exactly thriving, but hey, you're still alive, which is more than can be said for that snow hare dangling from your belt, its little paws frozen mid-scamper. Up ahead, the cave comes into view. It's more of a gash in a cliff than a cozy hobbit hole. Jagged rocks guard the entrance like fangs. You duck inside, instantly hit by a wall of warmth and stink. Smoke from the central fire clings to the ceiling in thick, resin-scented layers. People, your people, are clustered in clumps, cleaning hides, boiling bones for soup, and poking at lice. One guy is gnawing loudly on a marrow-filled femur and laughing at something that may or may not have been a joke. You find your place near the hearth, a flat rock still warm, and settle in. Behind you, a Neanderthal child picks at your hair for bugs. It's equal parts grooming and bonding. You're too tired to object. The cave's walls are stained black from generations of smoke, and in the flicker of firelight your eye catches something scratched into the rock. Not art, exactly. More like a dozen uneven lines, a tally, a story. Or maybe just boredom from a particularly long winter. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had symbolic thinking or were just really into scratching things. Someone passes around a chunk of roasted root. It tastes like a dirty turnip and bitterness, but your stomach doesn't care. You chew slowly, letting the flavors of ancient starch and cave soot lull you deeper into stillness. Now your ears adjust. There's a rhythm to the cave, the crackle of the fire, the quiet sigh of someone sharpening flint, the wet snore of an elder who always falls asleep early. It's not exactly Spotify's peaceful forest sounds, but it works. Suddenly, the mood shifts. A shout echoes from the cave mouth. The matriarch bolts upright. The tribe freezes, every muscle poised. Then laughter. False alarm. Just one of the hunters pretending to be a saber-toothed cat again. Everyone groans. You roll your eyes. It's the 3rd time this week. Classic Yurok. You lean back, pressing your spine against the cold cave wall. The contrast between warm front and icy back is strangely comforting, like the human equivalent of a toasted marshmallow. Your eyes wander again to the scratches on the wall. Maybe they're a story, maybe they're not. But someone made them, someone like you, hungry, tired, curious. That's the thing with Neanderthals. They were so human it's unsettling, not in the Disney princess singing animal kind of way, more like they loved, fought, grieved, probably stubbed their toes and cussed about it in their own way. They survived in environments that would give most of us a full meltdown by noon, and yet they're gone. Completely extinct. No graveyards, no final words, no dramatic collapse. They just slipped away. But before we get to that part, we're going to live with them for a while. Feel their days, smell their fires, taste their whatever that fermented soup is. It's best not to ask. One young Neanderthal, barely out of adolescence, judging by the still narrow shoulders, slides next to you and starts humming. It's tuneless, maybe nonsense. But something in the tone is comforting, repetitive, almost like a lullaby. Could Neanderthals sing? Did they have music? Archaeologists have found hyoid bones, the little U-shaped bone in your throat that helps you talk, and they look pretty modern. So maybe they could vocalize like us. But historians still argue whether they had language, rhythm, or just made weird mouth sounds that accidentally felt soothing. Either way, this moment, it feels sacred. You're not entirely sure what this tribe thinks of you. You're a bit too soft, too lanky, too inclined to complain about cold toes. But you're here, you help, you carry things. You listen, that counts. As you drift, you notice a carved shell around someone's neck, a perforated scallop smoothed by time. A necklace, a charm, fashion. The fact that it's here at all means someone cared. Someone wanted beauty in a world made of survival. Your eyes close slowly as the fire crackles lower. The smell of wet fur, burnt marrow, and crushed herbs fills your nose. Someone nearby coughs. Another mumbles in sleep. And the child behind you, still picking lice. There's no bedtime story, no kiss goodnight. But the cave, this rough, wild place, is breathing with you, and for now, it's enough. Section 2. You wake up stiff as a frozen branch. Your hips been pressed against a stone all night, and the cave floor, despite the fur and moss you stacked under you, has done nothing for your spine. Around you, the others are stirring. Someone's fire tending with half-closed eyes, poking the coals with a bit of scorched bone. A faint hint of something cooking already hangs in the air, maybe boiled roots, or last night's stew re-warmed and hopefully less crunchy. As your eyes adjust to the dim grey-blue light filtering in from outside, you glance around at the people sharing this space with you. They are large. And not in the awkward gym rat with no cardio way. No, Neanderthals are built like human bulldozers, barrel-chested, broad-shouldered, with arms that look like they were sculpted out of raw meat and granite. Even the smallest among them could probably carry you like a satchel of firewood. Their bones, twice as thick as yours, not in a cartoony superhuman way, but biologically. Neanderthals were made for punishment, climbing, crawling, carrying entire animals, falling down rocky slopes and getting right back up like, yeah, my femur's just a suggestion anyway. Their rib cages flare out in a distinctive bell shape, more lung space, more oxygen intake. You need that when you live in a land where the air bites harder than a jealous saber-tooth. Now look at their skulls. They've got that trademark heavy brow ridge, sloped forehead, and no chin to speak of. If you passed one in a modern mall, you'd do a double take, but not necessarily because they looked dumb. More like they'd just bench-pressed a moose before lunch. Their brains, bigger than yours. Yep. Let that sink in. Not necessarily better, but bigger in sheer volume, especially the parts involved in processing visual information and body control. They weren't great at social networking or small talk, probably, but if you needed someone to memorize a dozen trails through a dense forest and smell a storm before it arrived, Neanderthal's your guy. As the fire grows stronger, you watch one of them stretch, a full, shoulders-to-the-ear, arm-popping stretch that reveals layer after layer of sinewy muscle. This is what happens when your gym is surviving the Pleistocene every day. Want to get ripped like a Neanderthal? Step 1. Drag 120 pounds of meat up a mountain in sub-zero temperatures while being hunted. You join the others outside. Snow's coming down again, fat, wet flakes that melt on your eyelashes. The air smells clean, sharp, a little like pine. You watch a pair of Neanderthal teens kicking around a ball of packed moss and hide. Is it a game? Training? Or just boredom? Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had complex play, or if what we're seeing is simply utility dressed as fun. Suddenly, one of the elders gestures for you to come over. He's already down on one knee, fingers tracing lines in the snow. A crude map, maybe a hunting plan, maybe a reminder of where the mammoth bones are stashed. His voice rumbles like a gravel slide, low and full of meaning even if you don't catch every word. He points to the horizon, then to his chest, then to you. You nod. You don't really know what you're agreeing to, but you pretend. Later that morning, you help the group move large slabs of frozen meat from one cache to another. You struggle. They don't. You sweat. They just breathe louder. One woman laughs and slaps your back so hard you nearly faceplant in a snowdrift. It's fine. You're fine. Your dignity's frozen to your calf anyway. One fun fringe fact. Scientists believe Neanderthals had super strong grip strength, like cracking bone without tools kind of strength. Their arm bones show extreme asymmetry, especially the right side, suggesting repeated one-sided muscle use, possibly from spear throwing, possibly from hide scraping, possibly from some ancient activity that would absolutely destroy our modern carpal tunnels. You stop to catch your breath, hands on knees, steam pouring from your mouth like a dying dragon. The others seem amused. Someone tosses you a sliver of dried meat. It's tough. You gnaw on it like a wolf with a grudge. By midday, you're back at the cave. Time for repairs. Fur garments are laid out, flint tools sharpened with almost meditative precision. You notice one man's hand, thick fingers, nails dark with dirt, but every movement careful, deliberate. He's sewing, using a needle made from bone. It's exquisite work, tiny stitches binding hide and sinew together in patterns that are half functional, half beautiful. Now here's something interesting. Fossil evidence suggests Neanderthals likely had reduced sweat glands compared to modern humans, which may have helped conserve water and reduce scent, but also means they probably overheated easily. So all this muscle, great for freezing nights, less great when you're running down prey. That's where your scrawny Homo sapiens ancestors had an edge. Long-distance endurance. We may not have been stronger, but we could jog until the mammoth passed out. Of course, some historians argue Neanderthals might have compensated with ambush tactics, hide in the snow, wait for a reindeer to pass, then boom, group tackle, rugby style. But even now, no one's totally sure. That's part of the mystery. You settle again by the fire, now cozy under layers of pelts. You watch one Neanderthal hold out his hands to the flames. His palms are calloused like tree bark. The heat flickers in his eyes, and for a moment he looks almost modern, almost like someone you'd see across from you at a camping trip. Until he pulls out a bone shard and starts scraping at the heel of his foot with total indifference. One last observation before sleep creeps in again. There's a strange kind of grace to their movement, not elegant. Not like dancers, but efficient. Their bodies are suited to their world like puzzle pieces, thick skin, dense bones, short limbs to conserve heat. No part of them is accidental, and though they may not have invented cities or Snapchat, they were perfectly evolved for this life, this brutal, icy, beautifully slow world. You glance down at your own body, soft, doughy, warmed by central heating and emotional support lattes. You'd never make it, but they did. For 300,000 years, so next time someone calls someone else a Neanderthal as an insult, just remember, these folks would eat your ancestors for breakfast and use your rib as a sewing kit. Section 3. The days are getting longer, or maybe it just feels that way. Out here, time stretches like leather, tough, sun-dried and vaguely smelly. You've stopped counting in hours. Now it's before the storm, after the kill, during that week when the river was frozen so solid you could hear it groaning beneath the ice like it had secrets. This morning, the group is moving, not far but far enough to feel it in your knees. Neanderthals weren't nomadic in the romantic, always chasing the horizon sense. They stayed put when they could, parked near good hunting and sheltered spots, but every so often the food ran out or the water turned bad or the predators got bold, and then it was time to pack up the entire civilization and shuffle on. Which sounds dramatic until you realize that civilization is about 18 people, a few dozen tools, some fire-hardened spears, and everything else bundled into rawhide sacks. There are no wagons, no wheels, no handy suitcases with little spinny rollers, just brute strength, leather straps, and the patience of stone. You lift a bundle onto your back. It's heavier than it looks. Everything here is heavier than it looks. Someone grunts approval. That might have been a compliment, maybe. You trudge forward. The terrain changes as you move. The forest thins into rocky hills, where frost clings to lichen-covered stones and the wind seems to blow directly into your soul. You stop at a ridge to catch your breath. Below, a shallow valley dips between two rises, lined with ancient pine. It's beautiful in that desolate, end-of-the-world sort of way. Then you see it, just for a second, a smear of red on the snow. The matriarch doesn't hesitate. She drops her bundle and moves fast, her feet surprisingly silent. You follow. The red smear leads to a collapsed reindeer. Still steaming, eyes wide, mouth open in a perfect little O of surprise, the kill is fresh. And the kill is not yours. This is where things get tricky. See, you're not the only upright primates in the area. Homo sapiens are around now too, and while they're still rare, still new, they've got something unsettling about them. Taller, thinner, faster, probably better at naming things and arguing about them. They use bone needles with eerie precision and have these freakishly symmetrical tools. Their art, creepy good. You've seen one of their cave paintings before, actual animals, dancing in ochre across a wall, show-offs. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals and modern humans competed directly for resources or managed a sort of uneasy truce. But in moments like this, with the reindeer barely cold and strange tracks spiraling away, you feel it. This is not a shared buffet. This is a warning. The group takes the reindeer quickly. Fast work, silent, a kind of ancient etiquette that says, we didn't start this fight, but we're sure as mammoth dung going to finish it. Later, at the new site, just a wind-carved overhang this time, not a full cave, you help start the fire. The hides go up first, stretched between sticks and rocks to block the wind. Then the flint comes out, struck with practiced rhythm until the tinder smoulders. Someone fans it gently with a broken wing bone. Sparks catch, the flames grow. As meat roasts, you catch bits of conversation, tense, short. One of the teens mimics the long-legged gait of the others. Everyone laughs, but not comfortably. There's fear in the firelight. You chew slowly, lost in thought. These other humans, they're different, not better necessarily, just wired, weird. They paint pictures of handprints like they want to be remembered. Neanderthals don't leave signatures. They leave scorched bones and footprints that wash away. You wonder what it's like to meet one. Would they smile, offer a gift? Or just stare with those big, weirdly expressive eyes and size you up like a future coat? One mainstream fact here. DNA studies show that most non-African humans today carry around 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. So clearly, at some point, the two species got close. Close enough for, let's call it, diplomatic relations. The details, lost to time, but still. Weird family reunion, right? And yet, for all the intermingling, the tension lingers. You sense it in the way the matriarch checks the horizon more often now, in the tighter circle around the fire, in how the spears never get fully set down anymore. That night, as you lie beneath the overhang, wrapped in hide and smoke, you watch the stars. They are impossibly clear. No light pollution, no satellites. Just a sky so cold and endless it might crack if you stare too hard. Beside you, someone murmurs, a dream. A memory. It doesn't matter. You close your eyes. And then you hear it, a flute, faint. Distant, not the wind, not an animal, a melody. Real and deliberate. Here's your fringe fact for the night. A flute made from a cave bear femur was found in Slovenia, estimated to be over 40,000 years old. Some archaeologists believe it was made by Neanderthals. Others scoff. Too complex, they say. Must be from modern humans. And yet, the evidence lingers. Music, possibly from those heavy hands drifting through ancient night. The notes vanish into the wind. Was it real? A trick of your tired brain, or something deeper? Your heart slows. Your breathing evens, the wind hums, the stars pulse. You think about the reindeer, the silent theft, the fragile line between coexistence and conflict, and the possibility that somewhere, not far from here, a thinner hand is pressing a bone flute to their lips and wondering if you heard them. Section 4. The next day begins with smoke still lingering in your hair, clinging like a warning. There's ash in your throat and sleep in your bones. The others are already awake. Neanderthals tend to sleep lightly. Too many predators, too many frost-bitten nights have bred caution into their DNA. You're starting to pick it up too. Last night's flute still haunts you, like an itch in your memory that won't go away. You're not the only one who heard it. The matriarch is quieter this morning. She sharpens her blade with long, slow strokes, eyes darting occasionally toward the east where the trees are thick and shadows linger longer than they should. The fire crackles, sending up brief sparks, and for a moment, everyone just listens. There's something different in the air. A scouting party is forming, 3 adults and, unexpectedly, you. One of them hands you a spear. It's heavy with a fire-blackened tip. Balanced, yes, but made for someone with wrists like tree trunks. You try not to look embarrassed as you nearly drop it. A grunt of amusement from your left. You take it in stride. Survival tip: never let them see you flinch. Today's mission: exploration. A few herds have moved on, and the old berry patches might be thawing. You move in single file. Neanderthals aren't chatty on the trail. Every step is precise. You walk over stones, frozen streams, mossy hillocks. One misstep out here could mean a broken ankle, and no one wants to be dead weight. Neanderthals don't leave you behind easily, but they won't let you slow them down forever either. Your fingers go numb even through the fur wrappings. You miss gloves. They probably haven't invented those yet, or maybe they have, and you're just not high enough in the pack to earn a pair. By midday you come across something odd. It's not just another animal kill, it's arranged. Bones stacked, not randomly, deliberately, antlers curled just so. There's charcoal near the site. The kind that stains fingers long after the fire is out. This is a display, a marker. Not Neanderthal work, too neat, too artistic. It whispers of intention beyond survival. One of your companions spits into the snow, another growls something under their breath. You get the sense that these kinds of messages aren't new, just unwelcome. You keep moving. Neanderthals had territories, not strict borders, but mental maps, landscapes etched into their skulls through years of movement and memory. That grove of yew trees, good for straight shafts. That cliff face shelters reindeer in spring. That bog swallows anything heavier than a fox. Today you learn about one more feature, the cave. You find it mid-afternoon, hidden behind a curtain of ivy and frost. The entrance is narrow, but inside it opens up. A natural cathedral, the walls high and echoing, the ground covered in dry, packed soil. Someone once lived here. The blackened ceiling tells you that fires burned long and often. The stone niches contain bones, mostly animal, but some too long, too smooth. One of the Neanderthals kneels beside a skull. It's cracked, but the teeth are intact, worn, flattened from years of chewing tough meat. They whisper something, not to you, but to the air. A name, maybe, a memory. Then they gently replace the skull, like tucking an old friend back into bed. And here's your mainstream fact. Neanderthals are among the first humans to bury their dead. Not always, not everywhere. But enough to prove that death wasn't just something to walk away from. Sometimes they left flowers, sometimes tools. It's hard to say if it was grief, ritual, or practicality, but something in them understood permanence. Some scholars debate this fiercely, whether Neanderthal burials were intentional or accidental, whether the remains we find were just convenient places to dump a body. But when you're kneeling next to a carefully laid skeleton with a bear-tooth necklace around its neck, the doubt feels small, almost petty. As evening draws in, you help gather wood. There's barely any dry fuel, so bark and twigs will have to do. Someone finds a dead shrub, and the crackling branches feel like treasure. You're not just surviving tonight, you're building comfort. Dinner is fish this time, tough-skinned river trout roasted over a low fire. It's edible. Barely. Someone offers you a root that tastes like peppery dirt. You nod and chew anyway. Culinary luxury, 40,000 BC edition. As the fire settles into a steady glow, the cave changes. It breathes, the walls feel closer, shadows flicker in strange rhythms, and the air seems warmer than it should be. Someone begins drawing on the wall, charcoal lines tracing an animal shape, crude but confident, a reindeer, 4 legs. 2 antlers, a red dot where the heart would be. No one speaks. No one needs to. Art is a kind of magic here, not just expression but invocation. A way of remembering, and maybe a way of controlling. Put the reindeer on the wall, and maybe you'll find it in the snow. Put the heart in the right place, and maybe your spear will fly straighter. And here's your fringe tidbit. One Neanderthal site revealed a piece of stone with a series of crosshatches, deliberate, patterned. Was it counting? A calendar. A doodle? Nobody knows. But something in the brain behind that hand wanted to leave a mark. Later, curled up in a bed of hides, you listen to someone breathing beside you, deep, slow, safe. There's safety in this place, at least for tonight. The cave holds you like a palm. You feel the fire behind your eyelids. Before you sleep, you remember the skull again, not just a pile of bones, but someone who once moved, hunted, laughed, maybe even played music. And now, a memory, surrounded by firelight and silence. Your last thought is simple, soft, and strange. This life isn't so different from yours, after all. Section 5. You wake up to the dull ache of sleeping on stone and the unmistakable scent of smoke tangled in fur. Someone is already stoking the embers from last night, coaxing them into life with a few choice twigs and the sort of gentle blowing you usually reserve for birthday candles. Outside, the world has turned white again, snow, a dusting this time, soft, fine, and quiet. It dampens every sound, every footstep. The forest looks like it's holding its breath. You step out, boots crunching softly, and glance back at the cave. A dark mouth in a pale hillside, temporary home, just like all the others. Today the group isn't moving. That's a small mercy. You spend the morning preparing, sharpening spears, twisting sinew into cords, softening hides. This is the heartbeat of Neanderthal life. Not hunting, not fighting, but maintaining. Survival isn't glamorous. It's sanding the edges off flint tools until your fingertips crack. It's checking your toe for frostbite every 2 days. It's shaking out your sleeping fur to chase off fleas you've come to accept like roommates. The matriarch assigns you a job, gathering resin from pine trees. Natural glue, sticky gold, you're not alone, 2 others go with you. Both older. They don't talk much, but their presence is calming, like standing next to a pair of thick-boned oaks. You're safe in their shadow. You find a cluster of trees along a southern slope where the sun is strong enough to warm the bark. With a sharp flake, you nick the trunk just a little. Sticky sap oozes out. You wait. It's slow work. You catch a whiff. Sharp, herbal, not unpleasant. You wonder if it would make a good candle scent. Paleo pine. Here's your mainstream historical fact of the section. Neanderthals were expert toolmakers. The Mousterian toolkit, a fancy name for the suite of flint implements they used, was more than just rocks for smashing. There were scrapers, points, awls, even hafted tools, that's stone blades attached to wooden handles using, you guessed it, resin and sinew. They weren't just bashing things with rocks, they were engineering. But here's the quirk. Some of the glue recipes they used combined pine resin with powdered ochre. Not just for stickiness, ochre has preservative and antimicrobial qualities. Did they know that, or did it just seem right? Historians still argue whether this was learned science or instinctual magic. Either way, you're not going to knock it. It works. Your hands are sticky proof. On the way back, you pass a strange tree, not a pine, an old gnarled thing with twisted branches and no leaves. Someone stops. They crouch and gesture at the base of the trunk. You follow their gaze. Bones, not many, just a few. Arranged in a spiral. Animal, probably, but placed deliberately. One is pierced, like it was strung once, part of a necklace or charm. No one speaks. You stand there, breathing mist into the cold air, and the wind shifts. There's something deeply weird about it, like walking into someone's diary and realizing they wrote it in your handwriting. You leave it undisturbed. Back at the cave, a quiet ritual is underway. Not religious, at least not in any organized sense, but sacred in its own rough way. The older woman, the one with the elaborate braided hair and missing thumb, has found a handful of red ochre in a pouch made from a fox's face. She mixes it with water, dips her fingertips, and begins to dot her skin, shoulders, cheeks, chest. It's not for show, it's not decorative, it's armor. Body paint like this has been found in Neanderthal burial sites. Red ochre especially shows up again and again. It might symbolize blood, life, death, rebirth. Pick your interpretation. The science? Still murky. The pigment shows traces of ritual, of thought. Of people who didn't just react to the world but tried to shape it with symbols. She turns to you, offers the paste. You hesitate, then smear 2 lines beneath your eyes. It tingles, earthy and cold. You suddenly feel very, very visible. But in a good way, like the world knows where you are now. That night around the fire, the stories start. No language as you know it, but sounds, gestures, rhythms. One man grunts a low, looping noise, swaying slightly. Others mimic him. Then come hand motions, broad sweeping arcs, stomping feet, a slap to the chest. They're telling a story. Probably the time he nearly got gored by a bull, maybe a legend, maybe something that just happened and already became myth. You laugh when everyone else laughs. You fake gasp at the right moments. It's surprisingly easy to follow. Emotion translates. Fear, pride, embarrassment, it's all there in the body. Here's your quirky detail. Scientists studying the Neanderthal hyoid bone, a tiny U-shaped thing in the throat, suggest it was positioned much like ours. That means they might have had the physical capacity for speech, maybe not full sentences or Shakespearean sonnets, but language. Probably, maybe even a complex one with inflections, tone, and inside jokes. Imagine that. Neanderthal sarcasm. Historians still argue whether their communication was mostly gestural or vocal, but either way, they weren't silent brutes. They told stories, they sang, maybe they even had bedtime tales of their own. You fall asleep with the echoes of their voices still in your ears. Somewhere, deep in the cave, someone is humming again. That same strange tune. Low, wavering, it wraps around you like a second blanket. Outside, the snow thickens. Inside, time slows, and you drift. Section 6. You wake up colder than usual. The fire's gone out. No smoke, no embers, just that hollow silence you now recognize as a warning. The kind of silence that only happens when everyone is holding their breath. You sit up slowly, hide slipping from your shoulders. Someone's already standing at the mouth of the cave. You can see their silhouette against the early morning snow glow, stiff and alert. Something's wrong. You crawl to your feet, step lightly. Even the crunch of your toes against dirt feels too loud. Outside it's white, not fresh, powdery white, but old, packed snow streaked with ash and something darker. The wind is still. Too still. It's the kind of morning where even the birds seem to have left for safer trees. The others are awake now, moving without speaking. One of the hunters carries a burning stick, just relit from dried moss and friction. The matriarch is already slinging her massive reindeer hide pack across her shoulders. You're not staying here tonight. Neanderthals didn't live in fixed camps the way you might imagine early farmers or modern nomads. They moved constantly, seasonal migrations. Tactical shifts. An avalanche wipes out a valley, you move. A herd doesn't return, you move. Weird symbols and bone spirals show up in your sacred space. Yeah, you move. By now your legs ache less with each day, your shoulders adjust to the weight. You still trip sometimes, but the laughter is kinder now. More like teasing than testing. They've started accepting you, or at least they're used to your weird pacing and habit of staring too long at everything. As you trudge through the snow, one of the children, barely up to your waist, offers you a fist-sized object. You expect a rock or maybe a bone, but it's soapstone, carved, smoothed. A little lopsided animal like a reindeer or dog. Its eyes are just tiny indents, but the shape is unmistakable. You turn it over in your hands. It fits perfectly into your palm. You glance at the child, but they're already gone, trotting ahead like this was nothing. Just a passing gesture. You pocket the carving, silently stunned. Mainstream historical moment incoming. Archaeologists have found dozens of small carved figures in Upper Paleolithic sites, many much later than Neanderthals, but a few that might just trace back to them. The so-called Venus figurines get all the attention, but these miniature animals, they're storytelling objects. Memory markers, handheld totems, and Neanderthals may have started the trend. Fringe detail time. One site revealed what looked like a bird's claw, painted, polished, and strung on a sinew cord, not worn, not discarded. Stored. Why would a Neanderthal keep a bird foot? Fashion statement. Totem of flight? Part of a ritual? Historians still argue whether it's evidence of belief, trade, or just a weird fashion phase. Whatever the answer, the message is clear. Neanderthals had stuff. Not just tools, but personal items. Trinkets. Today's march is harder than usual. The snow gets deeper the farther you go, and the cold crawls under your skin like wet silk. You walk through forests with branches so heavy they bow like kneeling monks. Once a tree cracks and drops a chunk of ice dangerously close. You flinch, everyone stops. Then keeps walking like nothing happened. Survival tip. Flinching won't help, but memorizing which trees are too quiet. That might. Just before sunset you reach the river. It's not frozen. The current is too fast here, and the water is a black ribbon slicing through the snow. One of the older hunters steps forward, kneels, and dips a bowl-shaped rock into the stream. He lets it sit for a while, watching the current. Then he drinks. No one else moves. You realize this is a test. They've been here before, but not recently. Maybe last season, maybe last year. Could be safe, could be cursed. You're next. You crouch, scoop some water in your hand and sip, cold enough to numb your teeth, but clean. No aftertaste of rot or rust. The hunter nods. This river will do. Shelter comes next. Not a cave this time, but a rock overhang, wide enough to block the wind. Someone gathers moss for bedding. Another cuts branches for the windbreak. You help dig a fire pit, your hands stiff from cold, but stronger now than they were just days ago. The group works like muscle memory. No barking orders, just shared understanding. It's efficient, beautiful in its own way. Once the fire's lit, you settle in close. You're wedged between two others, shoulders pressed together. For warmth, for safety, for the kind of closeness that doesn't need permission out here. One of the women starts humming again. Not the haunting melody this time, but something brighter, hopping notes. It sounds like something a child would sing while chasing bugs. You hum along, best you can. Someone smiles. Later, you notice a game being played in the corner. Two kids with smooth bones, throwing them like dice. They laugh when certain positions land. Points, luck, prophecy. You don't know, but the rules matter. There's joy in the process. And here's your scholarly mystery of the day. Were Neanderthals capable of abstract thought? Plenty of scientists now believe yes. They made tools with multiple steps. They used fire, they painted with pigments, they made symbolic objects. And here's the kicker. Many lived and died in groups, caring for the injured and elderly. That requires empathy, memory, patience. Historians still argue whether that counts as modern intelligence, but when you watch a child laugh at a good roll of the bones, it's hard to imagine they weren't thinking in symbols too. The night is clearer than usual. Stars spill out overhead like salt flung across black slate. No light pollution. No hum of engines, just fire, breath and starlight. You take out the carved animal again. Turn it in your hands. There's a notch on its underside, maybe a flaw in the stone, maybe a mark left by its maker. You run your thumb over it until your breathing slows, then you tuck it into your fur pouch, not just for safekeeping, but because somehow it already feels like it belongs to you. Section 7. The snow has stopped. In the morning, you wake up to silence, but not the anxious kind from a few days ago. This one's soft. Peaceful, like the world is still asleep and you're the only one awake. You sit up slowly, neck stiff, and watch the orange flicker of last night's fire reduced to whispering embers. The air smells like damp moss and charred bone. Outside the rock overhang, the light is pale and blue, the kind of light that only exists after snow. It bounces off everything, making even the muddiest footprints look sacred. You take your time stretching. Sinews creak like old rope. Your feet ache from yesterday's march, and there's a raw spot on your thumb where the haft of your spear rubbed skin away. No one says it, but today is a good day to hunt. The group assembles quietly. The oldest among you checks the sky, clouds high, birds returning. That's a green light. Someone braids your hair tight against your scalp, not for looks but for practicality. You can't have strands in your eyes when you're lining up a throw. You move in formation, not like a modern team, not tactical in the way we know it, but fluid, intuitive. You watch feet, breath, shoulder twitches. One hunter drags a branch behind him to confuse any tracks. Another carries nothing but a sling, small stones in a pouch at his hip. Here's the historical reality. Neanderthals weren't just ambush predators. They likely coordinated hunts, worked in packs, and even drove prey into natural traps like ravines or bogs. Archaeological digs show mass kills of large animals, mammoths, deer, bison, all in one spot, suggesting group strategy. But here's your weird twist. One site shows signs that Neanderthals may have eaten elephants, not scavenged, hunted. That's nearly 7 tons of anger and armor. Historians still argue whether they were capable of taking down prey that large, or if they just found them post-mortem. Either way, the idea of short, stocky Neanderthals facing off against a prehistoric elephant, kind of freakish. Kind of amazing. Your own hunt today is less dramatic. You're after ibex, those mountain goats with spiraled horns and the nerve to perch on cliffs like smug acrobats. You don't climb high. You wait, you watch the wind, your nostrils flaring. It carries stories, sweat, fur, dung. Your spear is already in hand. You crouch in the snow behind a ridge, your legs screaming from the cold, but you don't move. Neither does anyone else. Then, movement. 1 ibex. 2, 3, picking their way through the scrub at the edge of the gorge. A perfect bottleneck. Someone clicks their tongue once, that's all. Then chaos. The slinger steps out first, whipping a stone into the herd. It cracks sharply against a rock, and the goats panic, leaping directly into the funnel. Spears fly, yours among them, you miss. But someone else doesn't. The moment a goat goes down, the group rushes in. It's not violent, not frantic, just fast. They know the risk of injury. Broken bones mean death in this world. Everything is controlled. Precise, the kill is swift, and the animal's eyes are closed quickly, respectfully. A whisper is muttered. You can't catch it, but it feels like a thank you. You approach, heart pounding, steam still rises from the wound. Blood pools dark against the snow. Then the real work begins. Neanderthals weren't wasteful. Every part of the animal is used. Muscle, bone, sinew, fat, hide, organs. You help with the gutting. The warmth is shocking, almost indecent. It steams in your face, sticky and thick. The liver is pulled out first. Not for cooking, for checking. It's examined like a book, dark, slick, oddly firm. Someone nods. That's your quirky bit. Some early humans, possibly even Neanderthals, practiced forms of haruspicy, reading organs to predict weather, health, or danger. Historians still argue whether this counts as proto-religion or just really dedicated guesswork. The liver is clean, good omen. You return to camp late in the day, hauling meat on a stretcher of twisted branches and rope. The children run out to meet you, not for hugs, this isn't a Disney movie, but for fat and marrow. They gnaw on roasted bones while the rest of you work through the night, slicing and salting, drying what you can. Salt is rare here. It's traded or scraped from dried lake beds. You watch a man sprinkle a pinch over a strip of flesh like it's magic dust. Later that night, the feast begins. Not a party, just warmth, fullness, and the sound of chewing instead of stomachs growling. Someone throws a piece of hide into the fire as an offering. Someone else sings, it's a good day, then a surprise. The woman with the braids stands up, holding a curved bone with symbols scratched along its edge. She walks to the center of the firelight and holds it up. Everyone goes quiet. It's a calendar, or something like one, 28 marks. Tiny notches, unevenly spaced. Maybe it tracks the moon, maybe it tracks days since the last kill. Or maybe it's nothing at all, and she just liked the pattern, but she passes it around, and each person touches it in turn. You press your finger to it gently. It's smooth with use, the grooves barely visible now. You wonder how long it's been traveling with them. Mainstream clue here. Archaeologists have found notched bones dating back over 30,000 years. Some of them might be Neanderthal in origin. They could be early attempts at calendars, counts, or even menstrual tracking. If so, that would suggest not just awareness of time, but of cycles, seasons, and maybe even self. Historians still argue whether these were memory aids, sacred tools, or just the prehistoric version of doodling, but you can feel it in your fingertips. This bone means something, it's weightier than it should be. The fire crackles low. Someone throws in a clump of herbs that smell like mint and smoke. The scent wraps around you, lulling your muscles into surrender. You lie back on a fur, carved animal tucked in your pouch, belly warm from roast ibex. Above you, stars blink slowly, one falls. Or maybe it's just your eyes tricking you. You feel yourself drifting, your body heavy, but your thoughts light. Like smoke. Like snowflakes that never hit the ground. Section 8, you're dreaming again. Only this time it's not a flash of colour or a feeling, it's detailed, almost deliberate. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, a sea of trees breathing below you, and the wind sounds like it's speaking, not words, but rhythm. Like breath, like story. When you wake, the dream clings to you, sticky, like cobwebs behind your eyes. You blink slowly, cold air brushing your face. The fire is out. The others are already moving. Today, no one says a word for the first hour, not because they're angry, not because they're scared. It's a ritual silence. That's your first hint. You're entering sacred territory. It's subtle at first, the way the group moves in tighter formation, the way the children are sent with the elders to gather firewood away from the central trail. The way every footstep is considered as though stepping wrong would wake something ancient and cranky beneath the moss. You're not sure where you're headed, but your instincts tell you, this isn't about survival, it's about memory. You reach a forest. Not like the others you've passed, this one is quiet in a different way. The trees are older, bent. Their bark is etched with long vertical scars, made by hand. You touch one as you pass and your fingers tingle. Not from cold, from the sense that you've touched something important. Eventually, you arrive at the mouth of a cave. But this one's unlike the others. The air coming from it is warmer than outside, earthy, familiar. But underneath is something else, something like burnt feathers and damp stone. Inside, torches are lit, carried carefully. Smoke trails upward into nothingness. The cave swallows you. You have to crouch at first, hands brushing against walls. They're slick with mineral sheen, but soon the torchlight reveals marks, paint. Red ochre, black ash, white chalk. Lines, circles, spirals. And then hands, some small, some massive. All pressed flat against the wall, then outlined in pigment, negative space, ghosts. And then the figures, deer long-necked and prancing, bears crude but recognizable. A bird with exaggerated wings, and a creature you can't place, part cat, part man, all wrong. You pause. Because it's looking right at you. Mainstream historical fact, cave paintings were once believed to be the exclusive achievement of Homo sapiens, but discoveries in El Castillo, Spain, and other sites have challenged that. Red ochre dots and stenciled hands predate Homo sapiens' arrival in Europe. That points to Neanderthals, your friends, your cave mates. So yes, Neanderthals might have been the world's first muralists. Now for the quirky bit, some of these paintings are placed where sound behaves strangely, echo chambers, acoustic hotspots. Sing near them and your voice vibrates, whispers, bounce and warp. It's not just visual storytelling. It's sonic. Historians still argue whether this suggests music, ritual chanting, or just a Neanderthal sense of trippy aesthetics. Inside the cave, the woman with the calendar bone begins to hum. Not like before, this one's deeper, throatier. She walks to one of the handprints and presses her palm against it. It's smaller than hers. Much smaller, you realize it's a child's. The rest of the group begins to echo her hum, layering tones over each other. You try to join in but falter. You don't know the key, the rhythm, but they don't mind. You're learning. You explore deeper. Some parts of the cave are almost too tight to crawl through. Others open suddenly into domes of glittering minerals. One chamber is pitch black until a torch is raised, and then, boom, color. The walls ripple with ancient brushwork. You swear you see motion where there is none. Here comes the big debate. Why did Neanderthals make this art? Was it religious, educational, territorial? Decorative? Historians still argue whether it served a practical purpose or something more abstract. Maybe it was all of it. Maybe none. Maybe they just did it because it felt right. You sit near a low wall where someone carved a groove, a seat. A place for offerings, you can't tell, but as you sit, your mind drifts. You picture a child pressing their hand in pigment, giggling as a sibling outlines it, a hunter sketching an animal he saw in his dreams, an elder marking the wall after a successful migration. Not to be remembered forever, just remembered. Period. One of the group notices your gaze and hands you a flat rock coated in dried pigment. A little bowl of ground ochre, a stick, a gesture. Your turn. Your hands shake as you press your palm to the wall. It's warmer than you expected. Alive somehow, you trace the outline slowly, awkwardly. It won't win awards. But it's there. You're part of the wall now. That's when the whispering starts. Not voices, air, wind, you can't tell. But it moves through the cave like it has something to say. A hush falls again, as if the whole group hears it. They kneel. And now it's clear. This isn't just a painting trip. This is ceremony. One hunter steps forward and places a small figurine, a carved animal like the one you were given, into a crevice in the wall. Another pours water from a horn. The woman with the calendar bone lays it down flat on a stone shelf, like an offering. It's grief. You recognize it now. Someone has died, not today. Not recently, but this is the place they come to remember, to reconnect. And suddenly it clicks. This cave is a cathedral. You look around with new eyes. Everything, every mark, every echo, every flickering shadow is part of a sacred map, not of space, of belonging. And now, so are you. By the time you exit the cave, the sky is bleeding orange. The snow is pink at the edges, as if it too has been painted. No one says a word until campfire, but the silence isn't heavy anymore. It's full. You lie down that night thinking about your handprint, about that weird half-human creature with the cat face, about the pigment still dusting your knuckles. And you wonder, who's going to find your mark, tens of thousands of years from now? Will they wonder what you meant, what you believed, what you feared? Or will they smile at the outline of your hand and whisper, "This one was here, this one mattered." Section 9, you wake to rain. Not the downpour kind, not a thunderstorm crashing in like a rock concert. This is the soft kind. Gentle, persistent, like the sky is whispering apologies for all the trouble it's caused lately. The drops patter against leaves and canvas and fur. Your cloak is damp, but it's not unpleasant. Everything smells clean. Washed. A little like wet dog, but that's just the pile of sleeping hides you call a blanket. Someone's stirring soup with a carved antler ladle. You hear the soft clack of bone on stone, the bubbling of fat, and the occasional pop of something mysterious from last night's feast. A child sneezes, another giggles. But you sit still and watch the smoke rise, because today you're thinking about the dead. Not in a haunted way, not in a horror story under your bed way, but in the quiet, respectful way that only comes from living in a world where death is constant. Not rare, not shocking, just there. And here's your fact. Neanderthals may have buried their dead. It's not certain. Historians still argue whether the burial sites we've found were intentional graves or just convenient sinkholes that filled with dirt over time. But at La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, a skeleton was found carefully positioned, head on its side, limbs tucked. Nearby, tools and animal bones. That doesn't scream, "Oops, he fell in a ditch." That whispers something else. Reverence. But here's the freaky, tender, fringe part. The most famous Neanderthal skeleton from that site. The old man, let's call him Grandpa Neander, was arthritic, partially blind and missing most of his teeth. And yet he survived to old age, which means someone cared for him, fed him, cleaned him, sat beside him as he wheezed. You don't do that for someone unless you feel something. Love. Kinship. Maybe guilt, maybe obligation. Maybe just a bone-deep understanding that someday it'll be you lying down for the last time. So today, the group walks again, slowly, quietly. You help carry a basket of herbs, yarrow, mugwort, dried leaves that crumble to dust when handled too roughly, not for cooking. For mourning, the path you follow isn't marked, but everyone knows it. You pass the standing stones, 2 tall slabs of granite with a fallen third one across them, like a broken doorway. One person reaches out to touch it, another leaves a piece of bark etched with a spiral. You do the same, not knowing what it means but trusting that the gesture matters, and then you reach it. The clearing is small, just a circle of rocks, some half buried in moss, a pile of smooth river stones, each one clearly placed, not scattered. There's a faint dip in the ground at the center. No bones, no grave marker, but this is where they buried her. A mother, a sister, a hunter lost to a fall or a fever or childbirth? You don't know, but everyone else does. They stand in a loose circle, heads bowed. The oldest hums, a different hum than the one in the cave, lower, slower. You join in, unsure, off-key, but nobody flinches. A pouch of crushed ochre is passed around, and each person dusts a little onto the stones. You follow. The red pigment stains your fingers. One by one they step forward and lay something down. A carved bone, a bead, a feather, a cracked tooth. You drop your own item, a tiny, smooth pebble from the cave floor where your handprint still lingers. Somehow it feels connected. And this is the moment it hits you. Neanderthals didn't just survive, they remembered. This wasn't just a place to drop off a body and move on. This was a memory anchor, a physical reminder that someone once lived, laughed, hunted, loved, and eventually left. Mainstream scholars used to say Neanderthals lacked symbolic thought, that they were too dumb, too animal, but here's a site in Shanidar, Iraq, where pollen was found surrounding a Neanderthal skeleton, like flowers had been placed there. Some still say it was coincidence, animal activity, maybe even rodent burrowing, but come on, that much pollen. In a grave? Historians still argue whether it was intentional or natural, but honestly, when you see it like this circle of red-dusted stones, this silence of shared sorrow, it's hard to believe it wasn't deliberate. Later, someone sings, no words, just tone, rising and falling like wind through trees. It's raw, untrained, not meant for performance. Just release. The others begin to move around the space in a spiral, slow steps, synchronized. A dance, a ritual, you join the rhythm. It's strangely comforting. Your limbs loosen, your breath matches theirs. It doesn't feel like mourning anymore, it feels like remembering. And now for the really strange bit. As the group disperses, someone, an elder with hair like silver moss, takes you aside. He leads you to a smaller circle, hidden behind a boulder. There, resting in the crook of a fallen log, is a skull. Not a human one, not quite, it's elongated. Animal-like, decorated with what looks like red pigment and charcoal stripes, a feather stuck in one eye socket. A row of polished stones set into the jaw like teeth. He gestures at it reverently. It's a spirit totem. Or a god, or maybe just a symbol of the wild, you can't tell. But he's not joking. He kneels before it, presses his forehead to the log, and mutters something low and rhythmic. You're witnessing belief. Maybe not in gods as we know them, but in something more than hunger, more than survival. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had religion, but symbols like this, cave art, pigments, grave goods, mysterious skulls with decorations, they all point in the same direction. They needed meaning, so do you. The rain has stopped. Sunlight breaks through the trees in lazy columns, catching on droplets that sparkle like beads. The grave circle gleams under the new light, like the pigment is fresh, like the memory is fresh. You don't walk away from it. You walk with it. The memory sits in your ribs now, solid and quiet. That night, around the fire, no one tells a story. No one cracks a joke, but someone hands you a scrap of leather with a line drawn on it, a jagged, zigzag symbol like a mountain or lightning. You don't ask what it means. You just nod and tuck it into your pouch, because here, some things don't need explaining, they just are. Section 10. Your dreams that night are strange. You see fire, but it's not yours, a flickering light in the distance. Shadows stretch long across frozen ground. You hear voices, but they speak in no tongue you know, sharp, rhythmic clicks and hums, almost insect-like. The dream you follows the sound. And as you reach the source, you see them, not your group, not Neanderthals. Something else. You wake with a start, heart thumping, eyes scanning the dim camp, the fires still smouldering. The air is sharp with the scent of last night's cooked marrow. Your friends snore softly around you, but the dream lingers. And for good reason, because today you're going to meet them, not directly, of course. They're long gone, but their presence is felt, in the way your group tightens its circle, in the looks exchanged when a distant howl breaks the early silence, in the way no one whistles, ever. Because even in the Ice Age, neighbors could be complicated. Here's the thing, Neanderthals weren't alone. Mainstream historical fact. Homo sapiens showed up in Europe around 45,000 years ago, likely entering from the Middle East after a long migration out of Africa. And when they did, they didn't find an empty continent, they found you, or rather your Neanderthal ancestors. Already here, already thriving, so what happened next? Historians still argue whether it was war, love, or some weird, frosty combination of both. You set out with a hunting party, not for game, but for signs. The elders have picked up on something. A strange footprint near the river, a piece of flint carved in a style no one here uses, a smell, faint but distinct. Like fire smoked through a different kind of wood, it curls in your nostrils like memory. The landscape changes. You move into lower ground, wet, swampy in places. Tracks are harder to read here, but the party is tense, alert. Every twig snap sounds like an ambush. Even the wolves keep close today. Then you find it, a hearth. Still warm, the group drops to a crouch, silent. You scan the clearing, a ring of stones, ashes no more than a few hours cold. Scattered bones stripped of meat, and something else. Fibers, plant twine. Braided, decorative, human. But not Neanderthal, these were Homo sapiens, and just like that the tension shifts. Because you've heard stories of slim, tall strangers with smooth foreheads and narrow jaws, of tools that snap together like puzzles, of carved flutes and necklaces strung with pierced shells, of weapons that fly farther than your strongest spear. The group gathers the clues in silence, eyes flicking between the ash and the treetops. And while they don't say it out loud, it's clear they're thinking the same thing you are. They're close, maybe watching, maybe not hostile. But maybe. Here's your fringe fact. There's growing evidence that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbred. Genetic studies show that nearly everyone with non-African ancestry today carries 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. That's not from handshakes and polite exchanges, that's from shared fires, shared beds. Maybe even shared lullabies. But it wasn't all star-crossed love stories. You feel the mood shift again as the hunters fan out. There's fear here, yes, but also curiosity, and maybe deep down a sense of inadequacy. Their tools are strange. Sharp, light. Their shelters, it's said, are more complex. Their voices, different. You find a piece of carved bone buried in the mud. It's etched with lines too clean to be random. Not Neanderthal. You pass it to your leader, who examines it, grunts and pockets it without comment. Later, around your own fire, someone finally breaks the silence. Do you think they dream like us? You all sit with that for a moment, because it's the unspoken truth. They're like you, but different. And now comes the scholarly debate. Did Homo sapiens directly cause Neanderthal extinction, or was it climate, disease? Competition for food. Historians still argue whether it was violence or outbreeding or simply bad timing. Maybe Neanderthals were already dwindling when humans arrived. Maybe the encounter just sped things up, but right now in your world the question isn't extinction, it's coexistence. You're not planning a war, not yet, but you're also not planning a potluck. You dream again that night. This time you see 2 fires burning, one warm, crackling familiar, the other colder, cleaner white smoke curling in tight spirals. A child stands between them, reaching out to both, and when they turn to face you, it's you. You're the link. Back in the waking world, the morning air tastes different, not bad. Just different, like the future is brewing in the soil beneath your feet, because here's what you now understand. Neanderthals weren't some evolutionary dead end. They were you, a little sturdier maybe, a little quieter, but curious, creative, capable of kindness and cruelty in equal measure. And the people who came after, the Homo sapiens, they weren't better, just different. You think of your handprint in the cave, your stone on the grave, your awkward hum in the burial song, none of it gone. Just layered, the way memory is, because whether by blood, by battle, or by bedtime stories whispered in a mix of languages now long dead, the Neanderthal legacy lived on. In fire, in bone, in you. Section 11. You've started to notice something odd about the stars. Not their brightness, those icy pinpricks still watch you like they've always done, but the way your group talks about them, quietly. Reverently, as if the sky isn't just decoration but instruction. Tonight someone traces a shape in the dirt, a curve, a cluster of dots, another curve. You recognize the general shape. It's the constellation you've come to call the Antler Beast, though it probably has a dozen names depending on who's squinting. The elder points to each star in turn, then gestures at the horizon. Migration paths, he explains in his scratchy voice. The way the reindeer flow. You squint at the stars, then the land, then the dirt map, and for the first time you realize they match. Neanderthals might not have written books or drawn calendars, but their sky maps, stellar. Here's your historical fact. While there's no firm proof that Neanderthals practiced astronomy in the same way Homo sapiens eventually did, archaeological sites like La Ferracie and Bruniquel Cave suggest they understood cycles. Animal migrations, moon phases, seasonal shifts, all of it mattered. Their very survival depended on it. Now, here's your fringe tidbit. In a cave called El Castillo in Spain, there's a series of red dots painted on the ceiling, some dated to over 64,000 years ago. That's before Homo sapiens arrived in the region. Some scholars suggest the patterns might align with lunar cycles or constellations, others scoff. Red dots aren't astronomy, they say, but historians still argue whether Neanderthals were truly symbol makers or just habitual doodlers with a flair for pigment placement. Still, when you see the way these hunters look skyward, how they move because of the stars, not just under them, it gets harder to doubt. You walk by starlight that night. A thin crescent moon hooks above the tree line. The wind cuts clean across the ridgeline as you follow your group to higher ground. More vantage, less shadow. Below, valleys curl in sleep, rivers thread silver through the dark. But the sky commands. They pause at a ledge. One hunter drops to a squat and marks a line on the stone with a bit of ash from last night's fire. Others do the same. It's not idle graffiti, it's tracking like notches on a tally stick, but instead of counting rabbits, they're counting moons. A pattern emerges, a timekeeper. You watch them mark each phase, each position of the stars, and slowly realize this is a calendar. A living one, whispered between elders and encoded in movement. They don't need parchment. Their stories are anchored in the stars. Someone hums low and rhythmic, another joins in. You recognize the tune from your first night in the cave, the one with the fire shadows and echo games. Turns out, it's not just for comfort, it's mnemonic. The rhythm keeps the count. Every phrase tied to a season, every note a memory of where the caribou ran, where the roots were ripe, where the snow fell first. You're witnessing oral cartography, and now the mood shifts, because someone points west toward a constellation that dips low this time of year. The mood tightens. That's the season marker for the long-teeth, saber cats. The sky warns you before the paw prints ever do. You descend back toward camp with your head full of stars and danger and dreams. That night you lie on your back, hands behind your head, watching the same sky you did as a child, but differently now. It's not a ceiling, it's a compass, a storybook. A warning, a lullaby, and in your drowsing mind, the stars rearrange. They form the shape of a mammoth charging across Orion's belt. The flick of the tail becomes the Pleiades, the tusks dip into Taurus. You smile, because now you see it. You fall asleep beneath that ancient sky, wrapped in furs, the ground hard beneath you, but your mind softens into something else entirely. The slow spiral of seasons, the hush between heartbeats, and in your dream, you're sitting beside another fire. Not yours, not now. You glance across the flames and there's a young human. Homo sapiens, taller, lighter build. Carved amber strung around their neck, and they're looking up at the same stars as you, and you both nod. No words, just stars, a peace treaty and pinpricks. You wake to birdsong and distant drumming, someone playing rhythm on a hollowed log again. Breakfast is roots, roasted slowly overnight. Your fingers still smell faintly of ash. And now comes the thought that rattles your sleepy mind. What if we're not the only ones who tracked the stars? What if Neanderthals helped teach Homo sapiens? It's not in the textbooks. Not yet, but think about it. They arrived, wide-eyed and overwhelmed, and found people already here, your people, who knew the land, knew the sky, knew how to read the mammoth trails like a book and the northern lights like a prophecy. Maybe we weren't just obstacles. Maybe we were mentors. Maybe we whispered, look there, see how that star moves like the caribou, follow that and you'll eat. And maybe they listened. Or maybe not. Historians still argue whether Neanderthal knowledge passed down through contact or whether Homo sapiens figured it out solo. But either way, you feel the gravity of what you know. And you feel proud, because Neanderthals didn't just huddle in caves or grunt at the sky, they marked time with pigment. They mapped migration with melody, they spoke sky. And even now, as you sit at the edge of your fire circle, toes dusted with frost, breath fogging upward, you feel it. The stars are still listening, and tonight they remember your name. Section 12. It starts with a tooth. You're picking through the morning ashes, poking at the coals with a stick that used to be part of a spear shaft, when your toe nudges something hard. You bend down, dig gently through the fine grey dust, and lift it out. Not stone. Not bone, a tooth, human. Not yours. The camp goes quiet when you show it to the elders. One of them squints, runs a finger over the worn edge, mutters something under his breath. Then, carefully, he slips it into a leather pouch and ties it shut. There's a weight to it, not just the object, but the meaning. Because you found these before. Burial markers. Neanderthals didn't just live together, they died together. And that death, it wasn't just the end. It was the beginning of memory. Here's your historical fact. Neanderthals buried their dead. We know this from sites like Shanidar in Iraq and La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. Bodies placed deliberately in pits, sometimes alongside tools, flowers, or animal bones. They weren't tossed aside like trash. They were placed with care. And here's the fringe detail that still gives archaeologists heartburn. Some of those graves appear symbolic. Take Shanidar 4, the so-called flower burial. Pollen was found concentrated near the body, suggesting someone might have placed flowers there on purpose. A funeral bouquet from 60,000 years ago. Historians still argue whether this counts as true ritual or just happy accident. Maybe a rodent dragged those flowers in. Maybe the pollen blew in naturally. But if you've ever watched someone kneel beside a grave and hum a tune into the dirt, you know, we grieve. You're led to a site deeper in the woods, quiet here. The wind hushes as if it's holding its breath. The clearing is ringed with stones, nothing dramatic, just enough to catch the eye of someone looking, and you are looking. Because you know what this is, a Neanderthal grave. Someone, decades, maybe centuries ago, was placed here, curled tight like sleep. Their bones rest beneath soil packed with ash and tiny stones. There's a shard of antler set beside where their hand would have been, a token. A tool? Both. You kneel beside it. Not to disturb, just to feel. And in the quiet, something strange happens. You imagine the funeral. You see a group, smaller than yours, standing in the cold light of dawn, one person singing. One spreading ochre over the skin of the deceased, one weeping without sound, the child of the dead, maybe, drawing a spiral in the dust beside the head. You feel it, the sorrow, the ceremony. Because we're not talking about accidental burial here. Not just, oh, the body fell in a ditch. This was intentional. And intentional means emotion, memory, meaning. You lean back on your heels, hands cold from the soil, and someone beside you hums. Not a tune you know, but soft, repetitive, like a lullaby trying to remember itself. Later, someone tells a story about a man who lost his brother to a fall from the cliffs. They couldn't find the body, so they buried a stone in his place. Smooth, round, warm from being held. They placed it in the dirt and named it after him. And now, when they pass the spot, they tap the rock twice with their knuckles. Just so he knows they remember. It's not written anywhere, no one had to say it aloud. But somehow you understand. Neanderthals honored the dead, maybe not like modern humans with tombstones and eulogies, but with symbols, songs and quiet spaces. And maybe, just maybe, with ghosts. You're not superstitious, much. But tonight, around the fire, you listen to a story that makes the back of your neck tingle. A tale passed down about a woman who appeared in dreams, only to those about to die. They say she wore skins stitched with white feathers and hummed the same note over and over until the dreamer joined her. Creepy? Sure, but comforting too. Because even in death, you're not alone. Now here's the wild idea floating through the archaeological whisper vine. What if Neanderthals believed in an afterlife? What if they buried objects with the dead because they thought they'd be needed? A knife, a necklace, a flute carved from reindeer bone. Gifts for the next place. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had complex spiritual beliefs or just basic social instincts, but after today you'd bet your last mammoth steak on it. They felt, they remembered, they grieved. The fire's low when you start to drift off. Someone's telling a story, half in song, about a woman who followed a mammoth into the sky. Her footprints became stars. Her tusk became the moon's curve. The children listen with wide eyes, but the elders, they nod like it's an old truth, not a story, a memory. And you watch the embers, let them fade. Because today you didn't just visit a grave, you felt a thread, thin, warm, unbroken, that stretches all the way from that silent hill to you. You hum softly, matching the rhythm of breath, and you whisper her name. Not because you knew her, but because someone should. Section 13, the air feels different today. It's not the weather, though the clouds are dragging low like someone forgot to tie them up. It's not the cold either, though it lingers on your fingertips. No, this is something else. A tension, a hum. You're in a cave again, deeper than any you've visited so far. The air inside is wet and still, every sound echoes, and even your heartbeat feels like a drumbeat bounced off stone. They don't take you here often. Which means it matters. The first thing you notice isn't the drawings, it's the quiet. Even the kids don't speak. You walk deeper, torch held out, your eyes adjust. And there it is. Colour. Across the wall, red and black lines twist into figures, mammoths, ibex, a row of handprints blown around with pigment, fingers splayed like ghostly petals. One print looks smaller than your palm, maybe a child's. Welcome to Neanderthal art. Here's your historical fact. Archaeological sites like La Pasiega and El Castillo in Spain hold some of the oldest known cave art in the world, with red ochre shapes and stenciled hands dated to over 64,000 years ago. That's before Homo sapiens showed up in Europe. Neanderthals were painting the walls while our ancestors were still figuring out how to migrate. And the fringe tidbit, some of the cave walls were intentionally prepared, scraped smooth, shaped to match the contours of the drawing. It wasn't just graffiti, it was intentional, like an early form of sculpture and painting rolled into one. Historians still argue whether Neanderthal cave art was symbolic, ritualistic, or just aesthetic. Did they paint because they had to express something, or because it looked cool when the fire flickered across the lines? You don't know for sure, but standing here, under flickering light, staring at the soft blur of pigment fingers whispering out of stone, you feel something ancient and intimate, like a breath that waited for you. You trace one handprint with your own, careful not to touch, and line up your fingers. Yours are longer, finer. But the shape is unmistakable, human, not quite like you. But so close. Someone behind you clears their throat and begins humming. Others join in. A low, slow drone that fills the space like smoke. It resonates off the stone, bounces off curves and crevices. Your chest vibrates with it. And the pictures move. Not literally, of course, but in the firelight the drawings shift. The mammoth's legs seem to lift. The horned ibex nods. One figure, what might be a human or a hybrid, leans forward like it's about to speak, and for a second, you believe it might. There's something theatrical about this place, as if it wasn't meant to be seen in silence but performed. Think of it, shadows dancing, songs echoing, paint glowing under flickering flame. It's a sensory experience, sound, light, movement, a story told with the entire body. You're not just looking at art. You're inside it. Later, one of the elders shows you how the paint is made, ochre ground on a flat stone mixed with water, spit, sometimes fat. A bit of charcoal for black, the result is thick, earthy, and smells faintly of rust and smoke. They don't just smear it randomly. They paint, carefully. One woman daubs pigment on a flat rock and begins shaping a figure. She uses her thumb to make curves, her nail to add detail. Then, with a hollowed-out bone, she blows pigment over her hand and lifts it away, leaving a negative print. It's almost magical. And maybe it is, because here's what the scientists sometimes forget. Art isn't just about beauty, it's about memory. It's about making a mark that says, I was here, I mattered, I felt something. You sit near the wall and let the paintings watch you. Some of them are half-finished, others layered over older work, centuries of pigment stacked like sediment, a visual time capsule. Someone points to a spiral etched near the back, not a figure, not an animal. Just a curl, repeated and mirrored. No one knows what it means. Maybe a symbol for water. Maybe a personal mark, maybe a dream. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had symbolic language. But standing here, the idea that they didn't seems ridiculous. This is language, in colour, in shape, in shadow. That night, back in the open air, you sit by the fire and paint your own hands with leftover pigment. Not to make art, just to feel what they felt. The grit, the dampness, the transformation. You press your hand against a tree and leave a faint red print. It won't last. But for a moment, you imagine someone thousands of years from now walking through these woods, brushing their fingers over that same bark and wondering, who made this? Who were they? And will anyone ever remember? You look up, the stars have returned. And if the cave was a stage, the sky is a gallery. All around you, your companions breathe in sync, some humming, some silent. The children are asleep. The fire crackles low, you press your palm to your chest, paint flakes away. But the feeling stays, because Neanderthals didn't just survive, they created. And their stories? They weren't written on scrolls or saved on clouds, they were carved into the bones of the world, lit by firelight and carried forward by breath. And now you carry one of them too. Section 14. The rain starts before dawn, not a violent storm, just that slow, soaking kind that turns the air to steam and the ground to sponge. You wake to the sound of it dripping through leaves, tapping gently on the animal skin over your shelter. Everything smells like wet fur and pine needles. You stretch, step out into the mist, and squint through the trees. Shapes move just beyond sight, people gathering quietly. No one's talking much, not because of the weather, because today you're going to see a hunt. Now don't get ahead of yourself, this isn't some epic war cry and charge situation. Neanderthal hunting was a process, a blend of instinct, observation, and very sharp sticks. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Neanderthals were highly skilled big-game hunters. We know from countless bone sites filled with butchered remains, mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, horses, bison, and more. They used thrusting spears, often short, heavy, and razor-tipped, to bring down beasts up close. No sniping from a distance, no convenient traps. This was sweaty, dangerous, your face might end up under a hoof kind of work. And the fringe tidbit, there's growing evidence that Neanderthals may have used wooden spears, even fire-hardened, as far back as 300,000 years ago. Some of these ancient spears, like those found at Schöningen in Germany, are balanced for throwing, implying a mix of close and ranged combat skills. Think javelin meets bar fight. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals coordinated in complex strategies or simply used brute force in groups. But watching what happens next, you'd be hard-pressed to call this anything short of tactical genius. You follow the group into the woods. The mist clings low, muffling sound, making everything feel like a dream. Ahead, two scouts peel off. One disappears into the underbrush. The other loops around wide, carrying a bundle of dry leaves and crushed herbs tied with sinew. Decoy scent. Brilliant. You crouch behind a fallen tree and peer out. There, just beyond the clearing, a trio of reindeer graze cautiously. Their antlers twitch, their ears flick. They know something's off, but not what. That's the key. The lead hunter, let's call her Raven, signals with her hand, fingers up, 2. Curve point, the team splits. Silent, no shouts, no barking dogs. Just rhythm and memory. You hold your breath. Time slows. A stone clatters, on purpose, far to the left. The reindeer jolt, but don't run, yet. They shift direction, away from the sound, right into the narrow gully where 3 others are waiting. One hunter lunges with a spear. It sinks deep into the flank. The reindeer bolts, blood painting its side, and crashes through the thicket. Another hunter emerges, stabbing down hard, gripping the wood like a lever. You flinch. It's not graceful. It's not pretty, but it's effective. The animal collapses. The others scatter. Your heart pounds and you realize your hands are shaking. This wasn't some casual nature stroll. This was precise, intentional. You saw cooperation. Signal communication, timing. The reindeer is still. Its eyes are open, cloudy with the final shock. The hunters surround it in silence, not coldness, respect. One of them touches the animal's snout, not a prayer, not exactly. But it feels intimate, and now the real work begins. They skin it with stone blades so sharp they could rival your kitchen knives. Joints are popped from sockets with practiced force. Every part of the animal is claimed. Meat, marrow, hide, sinew, bone. Even the hooves will be boiled later for glue. Nothing goes to waste. Someone hands you a rib, raw, warm, slippery. You blink at it, then watch as they crack one open, suck the marrow out and nod in satisfaction. You copy them. The taste is oddly comforting. Like bone butter. As the group moves the carcass back to camp, you linger with one of the younger hunters. He's retying his spear, a long wooden shaft with a black stone tip lashed with twisted gut. You ask him if he's ever missed. He looks at you like you just asked if the sky forgets how to be blue. Of course I miss, he says, grinning. That's why we go together. Together. That word keeps echoing in your head as you walk. Because Neanderthal hunting wasn't solitary. It was communal, strategic, flexible. And that idea of a group working as one body, one organism, was their greatest strength. You could be the best spear thrower in the world, but without someone distracting the prey, or driving it toward you, or finishing the job, you'd starve. At camp, the kids are already sniffing the air. Strips of meat are being set to dry, smoke curling upward from a fire pit. Fat is being rendered in a shallow stone basin. A young girl carefully scrapes the hide with a sharpened flake. Her hands are steady, her jaw tight in focus. She's maybe 9 years old. You think about what you were doing at 9. Spoiler, it probably didn't involve brain tanning. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. Someone hands you a piece, still sizzling, charred edges, pink inside. You bite down and close your eyes. It's wild. Gamey. Perfect. And just as you're settling in, a voice begins telling a story. A hunting legend about the reindeer who dreamed of fire. It's ridiculous and brilliant, a tale of an animal that grew tired of running, so it challenged the fire itself to a duel. Spoiler alert, the fire won. But the reindeer became the steam you see in the morning, rising up from the earth, never really gone. Everyone laughs, especially the children. And you realize something important. The hunt was never just about food. It was a ritual, a proving ground, a community exercise, a story in motion. And now it's over. Until next time. As the stars peek out overhead and bellies fill with fat and warmth, someone leans close and whispers, "You'd have made a decent hunter." You smile. You won't tell them that in your time, your version of hunting mostly involves online grocery orders and apologizing for forgetting oat milk, but in this moment, you believe it. You watch the flames flicker, and you remember the reindeer and the teamwork. And that strange hush right before the spear struck, and for just a heartbeat, you miss it. Section 15, the air shifts again. Not with rain this time, but with something stranger. You wake up and notice how quiet everything feels, not silent, but expectant, like the forest itself is holding its breath. The usual chatter of children and grunts of hunters has faded into the background. Even the birds seem unsure about breaking the mood. Something's wrong, no one has to say it. You can tell by the way people move, slower, more deliberate, voices low, eyes avoiding each other. You follow them toward the edge of camp. There's a body there, covered with fur and flowers, laid carefully in a shallow pit, dug near a line of stones. You don't recognize the face. It's someone from a nearby group maybe, or someone old, but clearly they were known, and they mattered. Because this is a burial. Here's your mainstream historical fact. There's strong archaeological evidence that Neanderthals buried their dead. Graves like the famous Shanidar site in Iraq have shown signs of deliberate burial, even flower pollen surrounding the bones. Others, like La Chapelle aux Saints in France, suggest that Neanderthals not only buried the deceased, but may have done so with care, positioning the body, clearing the pit. But here comes the weird part. Some Neanderthal graves show signs of disability. Shanidar 1, for instance, had a withered arm, partial blindness, and a severely damaged leg, yet he lived for years. Which means his people took care of him, maybe fed him, protected him. Let him matter, even when he couldn't contribute to a hunt. Historians still argue whether Neanderthal burials were spiritual, emotional, or just practical. He smells, put him in a hole kind of thing. But watching this, you know it's more than that. There's a quiet grief here, not performative, not religious in any structured sense, but real. Someone begins humming, a low circular tune. Not a song, exactly. More like the sound of the earth itself. Others join in. They don't look at each other. They don't need to. The body is covered in flowers, yellow, white, some purple stalks that smell sweet and sharp. You didn't even realize those grew nearby. You wonder how long they took to gather them, and that says everything, doesn't it? Time. Effort. Care. No one gathers wildflowers for someone they don't miss. You watch as they place a small object in the grave, a carved piece of antler, smoothed and etched with lines. No one explains what it is. Maybe it was personal. A token, a story, or maybe it's a reminder that the person once walked, once laughed, once mattered. You look around and realize that many of the people here have scars, a limp, a bent finger, a cloudy eye. These aren't fragile, tragic figures. They're survivors. People who have been hurt and carried on, who were carried, sometimes literally. And here, that's not a burden. It's a badge. Someone you hadn't noticed before, a child, steps forward and drops a round stone into the grave. It makes a soft thunk. Then they back away, quiet and wide-eyed. Your heart aches in a way you didn't expect, because this is ancient and deeply human. There's no speech, no sermon, just presence, and presence is enough. Later, as the pit is covered with soil and leaves, a small cairn is built, a pile of carefully chosen rocks. Some have markings, others are just right, the kind of stones that feel like they belong somewhere special. You kneel beside it and press your palm to one. It's still warm from the sun. It feels like it's listening. You can't explain that really, and maybe you shouldn't try. Not everything ancient needs a theory. Sometimes you just sit quietly beside a grave and feel the shape of grief. That night, no one tells stories. No one sings, but people sit closer than usual. The fire is bigger and bodies lean against one another more freely. Grief does that. It strips away the extra, leaves only what matters. You lie back and look up. The stars are shockingly bright. No moon tonight, just endless pinpricks of light. And here's a strange little thought that comes to you uninvited. Neanderthals saw these same stars, maybe not all of them. Some might be gone now. But enough of them, enough to connect. You wonder if they made constellations. Not your versions, of course. No Ursa Major or Orion. Maybe they saw a mammoth in those lines, or a bison forever charging through the sky. Maybe that big bright one was a campfire in the clouds. Or an ancestor watching. Maybe they didn't name them at all. Maybe they just noticed. And noticing was enough. You drift off to sleep with your cheek against the dirt, feeling it breathe beneath you. And for the first time you understand something profound. Death didn't make Neanderthals human. Grieving did, the way they gathered, the way they remembered, the way they loved even when it hurt. It's easy to imagine these ancient people as brutish, blank-eyed creatures grunting through caves. But now you know better. They buried their old, they honoured the injured. They wept for their dead, and in doing so, they made sure they never truly vanished. Not really. Because we remember them, even now, even here. Even you. Section 16. You wake to the smell of smoke again, but not the cozy kind curling from a cooking fire. This smoke bites. Your eyes sting slightly, your throat feels dry. The trees sway above you, their leaves trembling as if something moved through the forest during the night and forgot to leave quietly. Then you hear it. A distant rumble, faint at first like thunder wrapped in a whisper, but it grows. Louder, more deliberate, you scramble up and see the camp already in motion. People are packing, fast, grabbing spears, wrapping dried meat in hide, slinging bundles over shoulders. They're leaving, quickly, because a wildfire is coming. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Neanderthals lived through climatic chaos. Glaciers advanced and retreated, volcanoes erupted, and fire, whether sparked by lightning or caused by humans, was both tool and terror. They knew its warmth and its wrath. But the quirky tidbit, there's evidence that Neanderthals may have harnessed fire much earlier than once thought, not just finding it but maintaining it. Some hearths show signs of careful management, ash layering, and even possible storage of embers in fire-hardened containers. Whether they could make fire from scratch is still debated. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals mastered fire or merely followed it, scavenging embers, keeping it alive like a precious pet. But today, fire is the enemy. You run with them, barefoot, dodging roots and stones. Smoke curls through the trees, choking low to the ground. The light changes, orange, flickering, urgent. Every sound is amplified, branches cracking, feet slapping dirt, the hoarse breathing of those beside you. You're not running for sport. You're running to live, and this isn't the first time they've done it. You notice how efficiently they move. No chaos, no shouting. The older members are paired with younger ones. One woman carries a toddler in a sling, another loops back to help someone limping. It's instinct, patterned, practiced. They've done this before. When the flames grow nearer, they veer toward a rocky outcrop, a kind of natural shelter, half cave, half crevice. Cool, dark, blessedly still. Inside, the group clusters. Some people fan their faces, others spit into the dirt. You sit, coughing, your hands shaking from the adrenaline. Then, in the quiet that follows, someone chuckles. You glance over. An old man, his hair scorched at the ends, holding a piece of roasted beetle between two fingers like it's a cigar. He mimics taking a puff, then exhales dramatically, eyes twinkling. Everyone laughs, even now. Especially now, because that's what people do when the world gets scary. We joke. We poke holes in the fear. We laugh at the smoke. And that laughter is an ember, too. They wait. Hours pass. The fire doesn't reach them, not directly, but the forest will be different now. Scarred, blackened, quieter. You can smell the change in the air. And when they finally emerge from their rocky shelter, there's a weight to every step. You walk through the ashes together. Ferns that once brushed your calves are now brittle shadows. A tree trunk glows faintly, still warm, its bark peeled away like old paint. You spot animal tracks, panicked, erratic. A deer's, a fox's, even a boar. All stamped deep and fast, no rhythm, just flight. It's a strange beauty. Destruction leaves a kind of clarity. You can see farther now, the sky looks bigger, the sun feels brighter. But so much is gone. Still, they don't mourn it, not in the way you might. Because to them, change isn't an anomaly, it's life, and adaptation is the only answer. You spend the night on higher ground, no fires lit, just silence and the occasional crackle from the burned valley below. Someone hums a lullaby, low and slow, like a lull of wind through hollow reeds. You fall asleep thinking about survival, not the kind in movies where people build makeshift rafts and yell at the sky. But this kind, quiet, enduring. Built into the bones, Neanderthals survived for over 300,000 years. Think about that. 300,000, longer than our species has even existed, and not by accident. They adapted to ice, fire, drought, flood. They read the world like a story in motion, watching the birds, the wind, the way animals move before a storm. They knew when to stay, when to run. And when to hunker in a cave and wait for the danger to pass. You dream of fire, of it dancing across grass, leaping between branches, licking at the edges of everything. But you're not afraid, not anymore, because now you understand that fire is just part of the cycle. A reset button, a shadow that makes the next sunrise feel brighter. In the morning the air smells clearer. Crisp, like wet stones and singed pine. You follow the group as they move again, not just away from the burn, but towards something. New ground, fresh water, unspoiled game trails. A new story, because fire, while it destroys, also reveals, burns away the noise. Leaves only what matters, and what matters is that they are still here, you are still here. Walking together toward whatever comes next. Section 17. Your feet ache, not the sharp pain of stepping on something nasty, but the dull, persistent throb of distance. You've walked for days now, it seems. Not a march exactly, Neanderthals weren't military after all, but a slow, steady migration, like river stones rolling with the current. You pass through what used to be a hunting ground, now charred and quiet. A few blackened trees remain like skeletal totems pointing crookedly at the sky. The smell of ash clings to everything, but there's a kind of hope now. Because the group has a destination in mind, they're returning to a seasonal site. That's your mainstream historical fact for this section. Neanderthals didn't just wander randomly across the landscape. Many groups had what archaeologists call logistical mobility, a patterned movement through territory depending on season, resource availability, and group needs. Evidence from multiple sites, like La Ferricie and Combe Grenal, suggests repeated visits over years, even generations. So yes, they had homes. Not with chimneys and curtains, sure, but places they returned to, places with memories etched into the stones. As you walk, the elders start pointing things out. A boulder shaped like a sleeping bear, a thicket where berries ripen early, a clearing where a mammoth was once brought down, long ago, maybe even before some of the group were born. There's a story for every bend in the trail. You realize these people carry their past with them, not in books, but in bodies. In scars, in memories passed down through campfire whispers, and you're starting to remember too. The terrain shifts. You come to a gentle hill, half covered in grass and spotted with sun-bleached bones. Not the gory kind, just ancient leftovers, reminders of hunts gone well. The bones have been gnawed by animals and worn by time. They hum softly under your feet like they're glad to see you. At the top of the hill is the site. It's not marked by anything special, just a dip in the land, a cluster of flat stones, and a familiar hush. But the group relaxes. You feel it immediately, like arriving at a favorite camping spot. There's a shared sigh. A few people even smile. You're home. At least, as close to home as Neanderthals ever came. And here comes your quirky tidbit. Some seasonal Neanderthal sites contain layers of tools, hearths, and debris stacked like ancient lasagna. Over decades or centuries, these accumulations create a kind of prehistoric signature, a Neanderthal neighborhood of stone flakes, animal bones, and soot. Historians still argue whether these returns were strictly practical. We know the deer come here, or emotional. This is where my mother was born, where we danced, where we buried our own. Honestly, it's probably both, because practicality and emotion aren't opposites, they're partners. You help gather wood, not too much, it's warm today. Others dig out old fire pits and sweep debris aside. Someone finds an old antler buried near a stone seat, and everyone takes turns inspecting it. There's a smoothed spot where a thumb clearly rested, over and over. It belonged to someone. And now it's back in use. You help build a windbreak out of branches and hides. The construction is simple but smart, angled to catch the breeze just right, low enough to stay warm. A small shelter, nestled like a fox den against the hill. At dusk, the sky turns the color of worn leather, and something strange happens. You relax. For the first time in a while, your shoulders drop, your breath slows. You're not worried about fire or predators or hunger. You're settled. People gather near a flat rock at the center of the site. Someone pulls out a piece of ochre, a red, powdery mineral, and begins sketching casually. Nothing fancy, just lines, curves, maybe a figure. A mammoth with absurdly short legs, a human with giant hands. Everyone laughs. Because art doesn't always have to be sacred. Sometimes it's just doodling on a rock with friends. And here's the real revelation. This is what makes a place sacred. Not magic, not ritual, just time. Time spent, time shared, time remembered. You lie back on your hide mat and watch the stars come out, slowly, one by one. No fire tonight, just the warmth of bodies close by, the scent of herbs someone tucked beneath your bedding, and the sound of insects humming their timeless songs. You think about the trails that led here, the hardship, the beauty, the grief, and you wonder what it means to belong to a place. Is it the number of nights spent, the stories told, the meals cooked and shared, or is it something quieter? Something like a sigh of recognition between your bones and the land. You don't need an answer, you just listen. The hill is humming again, a soft, slow rhythm. Not words, not music, just memory, old, warm, alive. Section 18. The rain comes softly, no thunder, no drama, just a hush falling over the land, gentle as breaths. You wake to the sound of water beading on hide, dripping from branches, soaking into the earth. The morning smells of wet stone, clay and moss, clean. Ancient. Rain to you might be inconvenience, to Neanderthals it was everything. Water meant survival, but it also meant trouble. Flooded caves, ruined tools, soaked furs. And yet they learned to live with it, like they did everything else nature threw at them. Not fight it, flow with it. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Neanderthals were masters of stone tool technology, but not just any stones. They knew how moisture and weather affected the flaking process. Flint, for example, naps differently when damp. Some archaeologists believe they even aged their stone before working it, leaving it exposed to rain for weeks to soften the outer rind. It's like prepping sourdough, except it can cut through hide. Today, the rain becomes an opportunity. You watch one of the toolmakers squat near the overhang, a slab of damp flint on their lap. With rhythmic taps, they flake off paper-thin slices, each one curling like a potato chip. You're mesmerized by the sound. Tick, tick, tick. Soft, regular, like a heartbeat you can hear through stone. They pause only to adjust their grip, running fingers across the edge, testing sharpness the way a chef might check a knife. Nearby, others work leather, stretching wet hide across a frame to soften it. The rain helps. So does the warmth from their hands, the steady pulling, the knowledge passed down without words. You try it, and fail. Immediately, your piece of hide bunches, folds, and somehow wraps itself around your wrist like a soggy bracelet, but no one laughs. One woman gives you a grin, then demonstrates with practiced ease. Her movements are slow, deliberate. You mimic her, and for a moment something clicks. Not just the method, but the mindset. You're not just shaping leather, you're shaping patience. The quirky tidbit for today. In some Neanderthal sites, archaeologists have found composite tools, flint tips attached to wooden shafts with birch tar. Birch tar. That's not something you stumble upon. It takes heating birch bark in a low-oxygen environment, which essentially means they invented a kind of primitive distillation process. That's Stone Age chemistry, friend. Historians still argue whether this innovation was widespread or specific to clever individuals. Was there a Neanderthal MacGyver out there pioneering glue recipes while others just used sinew and hope? Either way, it worked. And what you see today is a group maintaining their toolkit not just to survive, but to thrive. Their technology might seem simple, but it's elegant, efficient, purposeful. Later in the day, the rain lets up and the camp shifts again. Now it's gathering time. You're sent with a few others to collect roots and mushrooms. One of the older women leads the way, walking barefoot over slick stone like it's nothing. She points out which fungi are safe and which will make you wish you'd been born an amoeba instead. She's not guessing. She knows. Botanical knowledge among Neanderthals is still debated, but evidence like traces of medicinal plants in dental calculus, yes, fossilized tartar, suggests a pretty sophisticated understanding of what was edible, useful, or just plain awful. You return with your hands full of earthy things, knotted roots that smell of spice, mushrooms shaped like little umbrellas, and bitter green leaves that will, apparently, keep your stomach from revolting later. Back at camp, someone has roasted marrow bones over a low fire. The smell is incredible, like meat, smoke, and butter had a secret meeting and formed a cult. You're handed a bone, cracked at the top. You suck out the inside and it's divine. It coats your tongue, warms your throat, fills your brain with light. Calories. Real ones. And for a second you see why these people didn't just live. They lasted, because they knew how to coax magic from the mundane. They didn't wait for ideal conditions, they shaped the world with what they had. As the day winds down, the children, yes, children, gather at the base of a hollowed tree. One of the elders begins to hum, tapping a rhythm on a stick. Another picks up the beat, then another. Soon, there's a soft percussion circle going, no instruments needed. And that's when you hear it, music, maybe not in the way you'd define it, no chords or verses, but a pattern, a flow, a call and response between sticks, stones and skin. Here's your final fun fact for the evening. A bone flute was discovered in Slovenia, dated over 40,000 years old, possibly made by Neanderthals. It's controversial. Some say it's just a chewed-up bone, but others argue it's evidence of music, of intentional sound-making. Historians still argue whether Neanderthals had culture in the modern sense, but if culture means story, rhythm, memory, craft, then yes. Yes, they did. You close your eyes as the music pulses, not loud, not complex, but alive. You think of rain, of flint, of marrow, of hands that shape and soften, and you understand that this is what endurance looks like, not dominance, not conquest, just knowing the rhythm of things and moving with it. Section 19. The air is changing. It's subtle at first, a shift in the wind, a cooler breath across the back of your neck. The kind of breeze that smells like distant snow, even if no flakes have fallen yet. Your body notices before your mind does. Hairs standing on end, skin tightening under the furs, winter is whispering, and everyone hears it. In a matter of hours, the calm of the camp shifts into quiet, practiced urgency. No panic, just purpose. You help secure the shelters, reinforce them with heavier branches, plug windholes with dry moss and stacked stones. Everyone moves in rhythm, like a well-rehearsed dance. Neanderthals weren't strangers to cold. They were Ice Age specialists. And here's your mainstream historical fact. Their stocky build, wide noses and short limbs were ideal for conserving heat in glacial environments, a textbook example of Allen's and Bergman's rules in action. Their bodies were the winter strategy. But they didn't just survive the cold by being shaped for it, they prepared. You're sent with a hunting team. Not for anything flashy, no mammoths today. Instead, it's small game. Hares, foxes, maybe a wild goat if you're lucky. They move quietly, close to the ground, stepping where they've stepped before. Every rustle is studied, every snap of a twig is a signal, and here's something unexpected. The spear they hand you isn't crude. It's perfectly balanced, the tip darkened by fire. You test it in your palm and feel the confidence of hundreds, thousands of generations behind it. The hunt takes hours. The cold creeps in through your sleeves, your breath fogs the air in front of you, but you endure because the others do. You learn to track by feel, not just sight, mud patterns, droppings, broken stems, a kind of language etched in nature, eventually a hare. It bolts and the chase is quick. One of the younger hunters brings it down clean with a thrown spear. There's no cheering, no bragging, just a quiet nod of respect. The animal is skinned and cleaned with such care it's almost reverent. The meat will be shared tonight. Back at camp, there's a low fire crackling under the lean-to. Smells of smoke, blood, fat. You sit close to the warmth, watching fat pop on the coals. A thick broth bubbles in a carved basin, flavoured with herbs, marrow, and maybe a hint of bark. Bitter but nourishing, and that's when the stories start, because cold nights bring memory closer. One of the elders, wrapped in a hide that smells like smoke and age, begins a tale. You catch only pieces of it. The cadence is half song, half rumble. There's a snow beast, a blind hunter, a cave so deep it swallows stars. You don't understand all the words, but you feel them, because story isn't just information, it's survival disguised as entertainment. It tells you what's dangerous, what's sacred, what to watch for in the dark. Your quirky tidbit tonight, cave bear skulls. In several Neanderthal caves, especially in places like Drachenloch in Switzerland, archaeologists have found cave bear skulls deliberately arranged, sometimes stacked, sometimes placed in niches. Were they trophies, ritual offerings, natural coincidence? Historians still argue whether this means Neanderthals had spiritual beliefs. Did they venerate animals? Did they see death as a passage, a transformation, a return? There are no definitive answers, but looking around this fire you feel something more than practicality. Someone hums a few notes. It's not music, not exactly, not like last night. It's more like comfort, like a lullaby shared across ice and time. You find yourself leaning into the warmth of others, body to body, heat shared like firewood. The young ones are already asleep, curled around each other like puppies. One of them snores, tiny, rhythmic, adorable. Someone presses a carved object into your hand. It's a figure, abstract, smooth, could be a bear. Could be a woman, could be both. It's been passed around this group for years, maybe generations. Not a toy, not quite a tool, more like a reminder. Of what? That's for you to decide. You think of how many nights like this there must have been. The cold, the hunger, the fire, the closeness, 1,000 winters, 10,000. Each one endured not through dominance but cooperation, because the secret wasn't strength, it was together. It always was. Later you crawl into your sleeping space, tuck the figure into your furs, and close your eyes to the sound of wind against the shelter. It howls, but you're not afraid. You're held by hide, by story, by memory. Section 20. The wind has stilled. Outside your shelter the world is hushed. Not quiet in the way a city sleeps, where machines still hum and lights still blink, but truly silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, that makes every breath sound like a footstep. You open your eyes to a pale light. Snow. A soft dusting has covered everything. The trees wear powdered caps, the rocks have grown sugar crusts, and even the ash from last night's fire glitters faintly under the white. You step out carefully, your breath rising like a ghost ahead of you, and then you see them. Footprints. Not yours, not your group's, something bigger. Wider, fresh, the others are alert instantly. Weapons are gathered without words, a perimeter is checked, the scent of tension fills the air, sharper than the cold. But nothing attacks, not yet. Here's your final mainstream historical fact. Neanderthals shared Ice Age Europe with apex predators like cave lions, dire wolves, and yes, the massive cave bear. Survival meant constantly reading the landscape and the behavior of everything that wanted to eat you, which was a lot. But remember, Neanderthals weren't prey. Not unless they were careless. Today's tracks tell a story. A large animal, likely a cave lion, came close during the night. Circled, paused, left. No kill, no blood. You feel both relief and awe. You were sleeping while a lion crept past your fire. You probably won't survive this, remember? But you did, and now, everyone gets to live another day. You spend the morning helping reinforce the walls with snow. Yes, snow. Packed against the hide frames, it acts like insulation. It's a strange thing to use cold to fight cold, but it works. Neanderthal logic again. If the world gives you lemons, freeze them and build a wall. As the day unfolds, the camp starts to dismantle itself. It's time to move. The decision comes without fanfare. The herd movements have shifted. The game trails are thinning. The land is speaking and the group listens. You help pack. Everything has a place. Tools wrapped in hide bundles, fires doused and covered, ash scattered. It's not just about moving, it's about not being found. Even now there's a sense of ritual to it, like you're erasing your presence. Like ghosts. Your quirky tidbit. In some ancient campsites, Neanderthal hearths were meticulously cleaned out before the group moved on. Burned bone fragments were buried, stone tools gathered or shattered beyond use. It was as if they wanted to disappear. Historians still argue whether this behavior was practical or symbolic. Was it about hygiene, safety, or a deeper understanding of territory and legacy? Did they believe the land remembered? Either way, it feels sacred. You sling a pack over your shoulder. Heavy, familiar. The figure from last night is tucked into your belt, its surface warm from your body. You don't know why you brought it, you just did. The walk begins. Over ridges of white, through valleys veiled in mist, across frozen streams where fish still flicker beneath the ice. The snow crunches softly beneath you. Every few hours the group stops to rest, drink snow, chew dried meat, and tell more stories. This time about you. You've become part of the tale. The strange one who came from nowhere, who fell into the old world, who learned slowly, awkwardly, who bled and mended and tried again. You're the fire-eyed traveller, the sleepwalker who arrived in the dream of the tribe. They don't say your name, they sing it. That night, you camp under a rock ledge overlooking a glacial valley. The stars come out slowly, like shy animals. No light pollution here, just the raw glow of the cosmos. The Milky Way stretching from one horizon to the next like a river of frozen milk. Someone brings out a drum, a hollow log with skin stretched across it. The rhythm begins again. Simple. Slow, it sounds like footsteps, like heartbeats. Like time passing, you lean back, watching the firelight flicker across faces so familiar now, you almost forget they don't speak your language. You understand them anyway, and you remember the words from long ago, your own time, about how Neanderthals were brutes. Dull, inferior, destined to die out. But here, at the edge of this world, with your feet warm and your belly full and stories woven around you like furs, you know better. They weren't primitive, they were particular. They were fire carriers, stone shapers, bone flute players, rain dancers, snow walkers, spirit keepers, mushroom finders, memory singers. They didn't build cathedrals or empires or stock markets, but they lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, and when they finally vanished, whether absorbed, replaced, or simply folded into the greater story, they left echoes, like footprints in the snow, and maybe, just maybe, you've followed those prints a little farther than most. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and your body sinks into sleep beneath the stars, remember this: you were here. You were one of them, if only for a while. Now let's settle. Let the snow fall behind your eyes. Let the wind soften into a sigh against your skin. Let the world dim, slow, hush. There's nothing more to build, no fire to tend, no lion in the dark. You're warm, you're safe. You've walked a path few ever glimpse, backwards through time, across frozen rivers and under ancient stars. You've listened to stories shaped not by ink and paper, but by bone and ash and breath. And those stories, they stay with you. Just as the Neanderthals, those so-called freaks of nature, those masterful survivors, stay with us. In our blood, in our instincts, in the quiet way we watch the fire. We don't remember them with words. We remember them with feeling, so let that feeling linger. Let it soften your shoulders, loosen your jaw, slow your heartbeat to the rhythm of flint tapping stone. Let the memories fold over you like the fur you slept in, the old rhythms, the old ways. The silence of deep caves, the comfort of shared breath, the knowledge that even in the most hostile corners of the world, someone once laughed. Someone once sang, someone once reached out a hand in the cold and held someone else close. You're not alone. You never were. Sleep now, fire carrier. Sleep, bone dreamer. Sleep, Snowwalker. The Ice Age is over, but the story never ends.